So, if you're trying to sell anything in this modern market, whether you're in strategy, marketing, operations, the ground has fundamentally shifted. Old playbooks, they're pretty much obsolete because, well, the consumer changed dramatically during and after the pandemic. They just demand different things now.
It's absolutely true. And the challenge isn't just, adapting your advertising. It's really overhauling the entire system. Brands have to rethink their whole approach to speed, their core values, and maybe most importantly, how they build trust, especially in this fragmented digital world we're in.
Right. And that's precisely our mission for this deep dive. We've really pulled apart the source materials you sent over. Those analyses cover the big post-pandemic consumer shifts and the evolution of influencer strategy. We want to hand you the essential blueprint, the nuts and bolts, for what's actually working right now.
Yeah, we're focusing on two forces that are really intertwined. First, how brands are adapting to completely new expectations. Expectations around, say, convenience and ethics, often at the same time. And second, how they're leveraging this, well, rapidly maturing global influencer market. This isn't small potatoes anymore. We're talking about a core strategy, valued at, what, about $21 billion globally? It's huge.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Starting with the consumer seems right. Our sources point to 5 major behavioral shifts. So these are kind of the non-negotiables now for modern marketing. What's the biggest sort of structural change we just have to accept?
Well, the first one, the absolute baseline we just can't ignore, is increased digital reliance. Now, that might sound obvious, right? But this shift, it runs deeper than just, moving transactions online. It's the total immersion of digital payments, specialized apps, platforms, just woven into the fabric of daily life.
And what's key here, I think, is that digital reliance went from being like a nice-to-have convenience option to basically an expected utility. I mean, just look at the massive and sustained growth of delivery services. Instacart for groceries, Uber Eats for meals. Digital interaction isn't just a channel anymore. It's pretty much the required default for how consumers expect to interact and transact and even discover things.
Right. Which, naturally, feeds straight into the second major force, value-driven purchasing. Think about it. When consumers paused their spending, their consumption during those lockdown periods, they started applying a much, much harsher filter to their purchases. So now buying decisions are increasingly funneled through things like sustainability, ethics, and a genuine look at the brand's purpose.
Yeah, and this shift has completely changed the stakes. It's no longer enough for a brand to just, claim good quality. They have to prove they're good actors. You see this reflected clearly in the success of brands like Patagonia, right? Their environmental activism is totally integral to their identity. Or Allbirds, focusing on ethical, sustainable materials in everything they say. It feels like the product itself is almost secondary to the company's purpose sometimes.
And this brings us immediately to a really critical tension point, which the source material highlights pretty well. If consumers are supposed to be thoughtfully vetting their purchases for values, how do you square that with the third major shift, this relentless demand for convenience and speed?
That's the strategic conflict every single brand is facing. Consumers are somehow both highly reflective and hyper-impatient. They want the ethical goods, but they want them now. This impatience, it's fueled the massive rise in subscription models, auto-replenishment services, effortless pickup options.
Exactly. Think about the frictionless experience of, say, a HelloFresh meal kit. It just streamlines an entire household task. Or how retailers like Walmart have absolutely nailed curbside pickup. If that purchase journey isn't instantaneous and utterly simple, the consumer, they'll just move on. Speed and simplicity are like the ultimate currencies, even if the consumer says they value reflection.
Okay, so we've got a consumer who is digital, demanding deep ethical values, and intensely impatient. That complex profile leads us straight to the fourth shift. And this one feels critical for finding the solution, the urgent need for human connection and brand authenticity.
Yeah, definitely. In a world that feels dominated by algorithms, faceless global corporations, endless digital noise, people are just yearning for authentic, community-driven brands. They want to feel like they belong to something, not just that they're transacting with someone.
And this isn't just some fuzzy psychological desire. It actually shows up in business success. Look at how brands like Glossier built that massive, loyal community. They did it through relatable, user-generated content before they scaled big time. Or think about Ben & Jerry's. They've successfully blended their social justice purpose with their ice cream for decades. It's really about feeling connected, isn't it, to the mission and the people behind the product.
Absolutely. And then finally, marketers have to navigate the pervasive rise of hybrid experiences. We really have to stop thinking of the online and offline worlds as separate entities. The consumer just expects them to be completely interwoven now, seamlessly.
Yeah, and the examples there are great indicators of success. Warby Parker letting you digitally try on frames before they even ship them. Classic.
Yeah.
Or Target leveraging BOPIS, buy online, pick up in store so effectively. It makes the digital decision the starting point for a physical experience that maximizes convenience. The whole journey just has to be seamless, treating those two spheres as one fluid interaction.
So, okay, if we synthesize this new consumer profile, digital, value-driven, impatient, and desperately seeking human connection, the big strategic question becomes, how do brands effectively meet this consumer in a way that feels authentic and fast?
And that right there is where that $21 billion industry of influencer marketing really steps in. It seems to be the dominant tool right now for achieving that desired human connection at scale. Whether you're selling fashion, fitness, finance, or food, it's everywhere.
Right. But if you're going to deploy this tool effectively, you absolutely have to understand the modern hierarchy of influence. Our sources break down the different types, not just by follower count, which is the old way, but crucially by function and, importantly, trust level.
Okay, let's start at the top, though, just for context. You've got the celebrity influencers. We're talking generally over 1 million followers. They offer massive, unparalleled reach. Think of someone like Zendaya. They move the needle purely through that global association, that star power. They give you visibility big time.
Then you step down to the macro influencers, typically 100,000 plus followers. Now, they aren't global stars necessarily, but they've established serious, recognized authority within a specific, maybe broad category. Could be high-end photography, could be endurance athletics. They're seen as experts in a field.
But I think the most important insight our sources really emphasize, especially thinking about that consumer demand for authenticity we just talked about,
Yeah.
is the power shift towards the micro-influencer. This group, defined as having, 1,000 to 100,000 followers, why should a brand seriously consider focusing budget here instead of just chasing the biggest names?
Because micro-influencers, they kind of solve that strategic dilemma of how do you scale human connection. Their power comes from high engagement within a niche. They feel more like a friend giving a recommendation, or at least a highly trusted voice in a specific community. And that directly addresses that deep yearning for human connection we identified earlier. Macro-influencers might give you category authority, sure, but micro-influencers, they give you trust and that deep specificity.
That distinction feels absolutely key. Trust over just raw reach. Okay, so once you've maybe chosen the right influence tier, you have to pick your battleground, the platform. And you really have to be platform native, right? Adapting your content to fit the medium perfectly.
Precisely. Take TikTok. It's built for velocity. It's optimized for trends, virality, short-form stuff that achieves rapid discovery, high turnover. If you want to catch a whale quickly, that's probably your channel.
Instagram, on the other hand, still feels like the domain of the curated lifestyle. It's more about those polished visuals, aspiration, maybe using stories or reels to build a continuous, engaging brand, mood, or narrative.
And then you have YouTube. Still absolutely essential for deep, evergreen content. If your product needs a detailed review, say, or an unboxing, a long-form tutorial, to really establish competence, that's where consumers tend to look for depth and that kind of sustained trust. And of course, we're also watching newer platforms like Threads emerge, focusing on real-time, immediate conversations. It's a very fast-moving landscape, demands immediacy.
Okay, so this is where we really bring everything together. We have this hyper-aware, hyper-demanding consumer on one side, and we have these segmented influencers with different strengths on the other. How do brands actually execute a campaign that successfully connects the two? What makes it work?
Well, it really comes down to one word that bridges both sets of source documents: authenticity. It is, without doubt, the primary factor determining both consumer satisfaction and, ultimately, campaign success. If the collaboration looks forced or transactional, or just like an obvious, poorly disguised ad, that campaign is likely going to fail spectacularly.
So let's look at the actual factors that drive success, pulling from the best practices in the source material. Number one seems to be prioritizing that authenticity and genuine storytelling over just, listing product features. The consumer needs to see the product integrated naturally into a life they can relate to.
Yeah, followed closely by visual consistency and personality fit. The audience today is sophisticated. They can spot a mismatch a mile off. The influencer's style, their aesthetic, even their verbal tics, it all has to genuinely align with the brand's identity, or the audience will immediately sense that misalignment. It just feels off.
And that ties right back to the value equation we talked about.
Right.
The source material really emphasizes relatability over celebrity. Sure, a big celebrity endorsement might generate a massive headline, maybe a quick splash, but a highly relatable personality, especially a micro-influencer, they generate genuine long-term action and engagement within their specific niche community.
And of course, no strategy is complete without definition. You absolutely need a clear call to action, CTA, and measurable goals. Success has to be defined right from the very beginning. Are you aiming for views, clicks, conversions, or maybe something softer like sustained community growth? You need to know what you're measuring.
But this whole push for transparency and authenticity, it inevitably introduces some necessary strategic challenges, doesn't it? It goes beyond just picking the right person. Trust is such a fragile thing online.
Absolutely. The ethical and strategic considerations are no longer optional. They're mandatory. Brands need to rigorously vet partners to protect that consumer trust.
So what are the main pitfalls? The things that can instantly derail a campaign and damage that trust?
Well, first, there's the basic legal requirement, FTC disclosure. The rules around sponsored content are strict, and audiences must be clearly and instantly informed when they're being marketed to. Non-compliance, that's a fast track to losing trust and potentially facing regulatory backlash. It's just not worth the risk.
And then there's that pervasive digital deception, the constant threat of fake followers and engagement manipulation. It sounds like brands could be wasting huge sums of money paying for ghost audiences.
Oh, absolutely. Robust vetting processes are no longer just a good idea. They're a necessary defensive strategy. You have to check the authenticity of the audience, not just the influencer.
And finally, there's a growing concern that kind of synthesizes technology and trust. The rapid rise of AI influencers, these synthetic personalities.
Exactly. While it's innovative, maybe even efficient in some ways, using AI-created personalities introduces fundamental questions about genuine connection. If a brand says it wants human connection, but the person delivering the message is synthetic, well, that presents a significant risk of consumer deception down the line. It could really erode the trust built so carefully with actual human influencers.
So putting this all together, what does this new blueprint really mean for you, the listener, as you craft your next strategy? The core takeaway seems pretty simple, yet profound. The modern marketing landscape is defined by prioritizing deep connection on one hand and absolute transparency on the other.
That's it. You have to prioritize those niche, trusted connections, often the micro-influencers, to achieve that desired human feel. And you have to combine it with the radical transparency demanded by value-driven purchasing and, frankly, ethical compliance. Success really requires balancing that need for speed and convenience with genuine honesty and purpose.
It truly is a delicate balance, isn't it? Blending sophisticated technology with something as fundamental as basic human trust, especially as these digital tools evolve so incredibly rapidly.
Which really raises an important question for you to consider, kind of building on the deeper analysis from the sources. Regarding this necessary blend of technology and trust, how should brands navigate the challenge of ensuring transparency and maintaining deep consumer trust when they start leveraging new, increasingly sophisticated tools, like AI influencers?
That's a complex thought to mull over as you build your strategy for connecting with this new consumer. And that's it for this deep dive. We've covered the fundamental shifts, the necessary strategies, and the new ethical requirements for success in today's market.